is not okay is change the status quo by force. And you could claim anything, and because there are many interpretations in the world, but what is not acceptable is to change the status quo by force. That is what China is doing at the moment. So that is the reason that the world started to pay attention to the Indo-Pacific or the South China Sea issues, and also even Europe started to send warships to Asia because these states think it is not okay to change the status quo by force. So when Iraq invaded Kuwait, that means the change of the status quo by force. That was not acceptable. And China has not invaded anything, but what China is doing is changing the status quo by force. So it is a small step, but that would lead to a bigger step. So that is the reason we are worried so much. And regarding the question number 2, the predictability of the US alliance, regarding this point, Japan got US assurance regarding the Senkaku Islands because the United States assured again and again that the United States would invoke Article 5 of the alliance. So Japan got US pledge that US would defend Senkaku Island in case of contingency. So regarding from Japan's point of view, the United States is a reliable partner. However, for other states like the Philippines, maybe it is not clear. So if the United States want to strengthen ties with the Philippines or other Asian countries, maybe the United States need to clarify what it is going to do in case of the contingency. So in this point, the US is a very reliable partner for Japan, but I'm not sure for ASEAN states.
Okay, Lynn, you have your hand up. I take it you want to respond to this.
Thank you. In terms of what's permissible, I think I completely agree with Rachel's point that not everything that China does is necessarily problematic. So, for instance, the fact that China and the Philippines entered into a memorandum of understanding to cooperate with oil and gas development, I think some of the views were that this is terrible. How can the Philippines do that? It's giving up its sovereign rights and resources to its own EEZ. But actually, it depends on how the agreement is framed. So, for instance, if the agreement was framed so that China and the Philippines are equally entitled to the resources off the Philippines coast, that's a bit problematic because, as the tribunal found, China has no overlapping claims with the Philippines in that respect, right? The Philippines enjoys its EEZ unencumbered from the 9-dash line, by the 9-dash line, or any EEZ generated from features in the Spratlys. So, but if the agreement, however, were framed such that the Philippines has complete sovereign rights and control over those waters, but it hires or it contracts with China as a subcontractor to help the Philippines, which does not have the requisite technology in this respect, drill for oil and gas in this area, and it pays China to do that, that's a more acceptable proposition. So in some cases, we don't have to be jumping at everything China does, but we have to ensure that what it does is permissible under international law, it's allowed under international law. And then in terms of what's not permissible, and this is tied up to what Chicago asked about, how does what is permissible or not permissible impact the ability of the United States and other powers to intervene in the occasion of a conflict. Now, I would say that the ability to conduct military exercises in the EEZ of coastal states is an absolute non-negotiable factor. So we look into history, it used to be just the territorial seas and the high seas. And then with UNCLOS, we had the exclusive economic zone kind of carved out from the high seas, which allowed coastal states exclusive economic rights to the waters within that 20-nautical mile EEZ. This didn't change any of the other high sea security freedoms, etc., but only gave the coastal states economic rights. So I think the fact that we might try to negotiate security rights as well for coastal states within the EEZ that don't impinge on their economic rights, I think that's non-negotiable because it impacts the ability of naval powers on our Western partners to be able to intervene in the event of a conflict. So I think that would be highly problematic. And we see why this would be problematic if we look at the code of conduct that China is currently negotiating with other member states. And in that code of conduct, China is seeking to say that in the event that there are a coastal state wants to conduct military activities with other outside powers, the permission of other states, including China, should be first sought. And that starts to provide a no-go zone in the region, which will be highly problematic in the event of conflict. And gradually what that means is that you have an increasing power sphere where not only in cases of actual conflict, but there's an increasing dominance of China and the inability of other powers to hold sway in the region, which would have a mitigating effect in terms of the balance of power. So I think we want to avoid things like that. It's just a slippery slope that I worry about.
Okay, great answers, by the way. Next we're going to go to Carmina, who's back. Carmina, are you directing a question at anybody first? Or?
No, actually it's for anybody who wants to answer. Maybe for Muslim, probably, because now I'm going to raise the issue of a known unknown, which is, well, the South China Sea issue, especially with the case of the South China Sea arbitration, I think it's not just really all about EEZ and resource conflict in the economic sense, but some scholars actually consider the South China Sea arbitration as a landmark case for requiring an interpretation of the protection and preservation of the marine environment. And one of the the reason why they gave it to the Philippines is because Chinese activities cause severe harm in the maritime ecosystem. So it's not just about resource conflict in the way who benefits from this territorial dispute, but one of the main things that the Philippines raise is how do we protect turtles, for example. Even Washington Post had a headline of turtles being a flashpoint of Philippine-China relations. And here we're talking about arriving at the common understanding. So my question is, to what extent is the environment, climate change issues like this in relation to territorial dispute a point where we can reach a common understanding? Because now China is moving towards energy, green energy, and so on and so forth, and that's their source of pride. But when it comes to territorial disputes, we know China is not just building military fixtures or structures in Spratleys. By doing so, they're also destroying coral reefs. So I think this is an issue that needs to be discussed. To what extent, again, is this territorial dispute could lead us to thinking maybe beyond sovereignty and national interest, but more of an environment concern. How do I say angle? Thank you.
Beck, I saw you nodding let's just tell you there's Beck?
Very briefly, before Lynn. So one of our colleagues at the University of New South Wales, Pitchamont Yeofontong, talks a lot about the environmental issues in the South China Sea dispute, and I think it's really fair that you've picked up on that issue. I only wanted to say, and she does work on environmental peace building as a concept that she applies to the South China Sea as well as to other areas such as the Mekong area. But I wanted to just add in and say that the environmental aspects of the South China Sea are increasingly a basis for cooperation among states. This is seen as it's a term that's used a lot, kind of low-hanging fruit for states, Southeast Asian states, to engage with other states such as Australia in maritime cooperation in a way that doesn't necessarily provoke great power consternation. So things like coral reef degradation, you have experts working together from different countries on that. You have marine science diplomacy on issues such as pollution in the maritime commons. There's a range of other issues that I'm not as familiar with. But that is actually, I think, a basis for bilateral and multilateral cooperation.
Fantastic, and the great news is that Ichimon is going to be part of this forum in one of the later panels.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
So we do have a question. Yours, CIAM, I think it is. The last bit of your last name is dropped off, but I will be sending around a program soon, but it is Phoebe is now typing it out, so she gets the spelling right. PHANTO. There we go. So Dr. Ichimon Yofata is great. Did anybody else want to take a bite of the question, Lynn? This better be the last intervention, I think.
I think that's
I think, as Beck pointed out, there's certainly scope for the environment providing a means by which countries can work together and reach a common understanding. But I'm not entirely optimistic about how far we can go with that. If we look at other issues where you would expect cooperation to, because it matters so greatly to both sides, the United States and China, say COVID-19 cooperation would have made perfect sense then, right, dealing with it and it's and yet we saw so little cooperation in that respect. I think the fact of the matter is that geopolitical competition, great power rivalry has subsumed so many of the other issues which could potentially be used to work together to foster a greater understanding, and we see those issues used as a sword rather than as a hand held out in friendship. So I think, there is some scope for that, but I wouldn't take it. I am not all that optimistic. And if we look at the reason why the environmental issue was raised, that it was raised in the South China Sea Tribunal ruling because there were certain Chinese activities that were considered objectionable, and so for instance, reclaiming land on these features in the South China Sea as well as militarizing them. But the tribunal wasn't able to directly rule whether or not that was unlawful or not, because this would depend, of course, on whether or not China had sovereignty over these features, and the tribunal did not have decision to hear sovereignty here on issues of sovereignty over land unconstituted those issues. So all the tribunal was able to say was that China's island building militarization of features on Mischief Reef, as we remember, is a low-tide elevation.
If there's a revolution, the population just throws out the prime minister or president. The elite stays in power
features in
because
which
the
China
public is never aware of the
reclaimed
real
land as
enemy
well as
is.
militarized. I mean,
In Evian, France in 1991, standing before the Bilderberg-Group, the apex of the world government power structure, David Rockefeller defined the New World Order as a system of world government serving international banking elite. For decades, the banker-owned media would attack anyone who dared to warn the public that a dictatorial world government was being constructed right under their nose, and that national sovereignty was being deliberately destroyed.
Thank you all. That's been a fascinating
And
discussion.
now, after years of denial, the media and the elite themselves are proudly announcing that not only is world government real, but is the answer to the financial crisis that they carefully engineered. The Bilderberg Group consists of the heads of all of the managing roundtable groups that steer individual countries. Picture the elite power structure of the world as a giant pyramid, with only the elite of the elite at the tip top of the capstone. The group has been so secret that until the mid-1980s, the controlled corporate media denied its existence. Into the late 1990s, coverage only consisted of rare one-line mentions.
I don't believe one could ask for a better lineup of key institutional perspectives on how the framework of trusted connectivity can be applied to improve coordination among democracies to
With the
ensure
rise
progress
of the
towards
alternative
delivering
media, their
on the global
stranglehold on
demand for
information has
physical and
begun to
digital
slip.
infrastructure. It can also
In the
lay
spring
a
of
foundation for a
1954,
digital future
Joseph
that
Redinger,
advances human
Polish
dignity,
political advisor
fundamental
and
freedoms,
founder of the European
reaffirms
movement that would lead to the founding of the European Union, started the
development finance
Bilderberg Group,
institutions like
an
the IFC,
informal and
BFC,
off-the-record
and
conference
Fund
for political
are
and
critical
business
to
elites
mobilizing
from
private
European
capital
and
to
Western
bridge the
nations.
massive infrastructure financing gap facing
With the help of Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, along with other powerful politicians and businessmen, they organized the first annual Bilderberg meeting at the Hotel de Bilderberg in Oosterbeek, Netherlands.
Last year amounting to only
The Prince, a former executive for IG Farben and a former Nazi SS party member before the war, was also an influential executive in the oil industry, working for Royal Dutch Petroleum.
Services and more efficient production.
As a member of the Dutch royal family and the father of the current matriarch and fellow Bilderberger Queen Beatrix, Bernhard is a very powerful and influential member of the European community. The original stated goals of the Bilderberg Group were to bring together the leaders of business, finance, and politicians from Europe and Western nations in a forum that would allow for candid and frank discussions of international issues without the fear of being quoted or recorded. Thus, the meetings are held in secret and are by invitation only. For almost 60 years, the Bilderberg Group has been meeting behind closed doors in luxury hotels around the world to discuss in secret their plan for global control of world events and markets. Over the years, their members have included heads of state, politicians, business executives, media moguls, global financiers, military leaders, intelligence agencies, and many other powerful organizations and individuals whose reach extends to every corner of the world.
We want to make sure that we can get documentation of the attendees just to have confirmation of who is in attendance. Once you know, you can absolutely confirm who's in attendance. You can have a better feel for what are some of the things that are going to be discussed. You talk about the 99%, but it's really the 99.99999% because the people that are here, they're not 1 out of 100, they're not 1 out of 1,000, they're not 1 out of 10,000 or 100,000, they're more like 1 out of 1 million or 10 million, or beyond that, okay? That's right. It's the billionaire and trillionaire club, and you and I, we're not in it, we're not ever going to be in it, so we got to hold their feet to the fire, we've got to expose what's going on here, we've got to find out who the 2012 attendees are, we've got to keep our eyes on the headlines in the next couple of weeks, months, and even years to see what these associations have done geopolitically. Because they'll be in the headlines when you have someone like Davignon claiming, and not really claiming because he's on the inside, he would know better than you and I, that the Bilderberg Group was instrumental in creating the European Union and the Euro. I would say that's a pretty big deal. And whether that's evil or not, that's a geopolitical move. And that decision was made by this group.
Etienne Davignon is the honorary chairman of the Bilderberg Group, as well as the head of its steering committee. The committee he heads selects and invites each year's attendees.
Billionaire financier David Rockefeller of Chase Manhattan Bank has been a steady donor to the Bilderberg meetings and has been a cornerstone of the group's development, attending nearly every conference since its inception in 1954. Rockefeller is an honorary lifetime chairman of the Bilderberg Group and has been involved in the development of many other powerful globalist think tanks, such as the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations. In 1965, David Rockefeller gave a speech to the International Industrial Conference in San Francisco, where he said, "We have entered upon an era in which interdisciplinary cooperation on a worldwide basis must be the cornerstone of accomplishment. Each of us has the duty to fashion his own contribution to fit the grand design of a global community. For many of us, the marketplace of tomorrow will be no less than this whole planet of Earth. What we do will manifest itself in ways that we cannot foretell, and it will have an unforeseen impact upon individual lives and whole societies. What we are is God's gift to man. What we become is man's gift to God."
A lot of these Bilderbergers are on the record saying that they want global depopulation, and they're proud of it.
war criminal Henry Kissinger has stepped foot in the Westfield Marriott Hotel in Chantilly, Virginia. We have him on video entering the hotel, and we would like for you gentlemen to go inside the hotel and arrest Kissinger for his war crimes.
Former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger has been deeply involved in the Bilderberg Group, attending dozens of their meetings over the years and acting on the Bilderberg Steering Committee. Kissinger faces allegations of war crimes for his involvement in the secret bombing campaign that took place in Cambodia during the Vietnam War in the 1970s. It is alleged that Kissinger willfully engaged in the murder of tens of thousands of civilians in various areas of Cambodia, which led to the destabilization of the country into a civil war, resulting in the rise of the infamous Khmer Rouge. Kissinger is also wanted in several countries for his involvement in supporting the Pinochet regime and the CIA-backed coup that took place in Chile on September 11, 1973. Pinochet, who is now facing a war crimes tribunal, murdered the democratically elected President Salvador Allende and started a military junta which resulted in the kidnapping, forced displacement, and torture of thousands of men, women, and children in Chile. Henry Kissinger actively supported these actions that were taking place at that time, which constituted crimes against humanity. Kissinger was also involved in a controversial study in 1974 called National Security Study Memorandum 200, in which the basic thesis called for an active campaign for the depopulation of several less developed countries to stem the risk for civil unrest.
Are you still giving out orders like Memorandum 200, where you said depopulation should be in hell? Sir, just a question. I'm not going to go to hell. Memorandum 200, sir? Memorandum 200? Just asked him a question about Memorandum 200 that he wrote in April 24, 1974. It's an honest question. Okay. Kissinger, Memorandum 200. Depopulation.
We're on topic now. We give you the access. If you want to burn bridges, you can do that.
I don't want to burn any bridges. I wasn't disrespectful. I wasn't accusatory. It was a serious question.
We're on topic.
Okay, I understand that. So, what about the depopulation? I mean, Memorandum 200. Why are you afraid to talk about your depopulation plan?
Why don't you get lost?
Why should I get lost? It's serious. How am I sick? You're the one committing.
What does it do when you get 120 of the most powerful people in the world getting together to have meetings with government officials? I mean, that's amazing.
What it is what I mean is that they're planning the corporate agenda. They're not planning the democratic human journey agenda, in my opinion. Mussolini had a definition is when the interests of the corporation take completely over from all other interests, and that's fascism.
He said it should probably be called corporatism.
Well, call it corporatism, call it fascism, call it neo-lib, neo-con. There's a whole variety of political words, depending on which side of the stripe you come from, to start with, which describes the thing. But what they are describing is the complete end of democracy, the end of what matters to people, the end of what happens to human journey. And for that reason, I think this is revolting.
In the last decade, the list of attendees has been leaked to reporters by moles on the inside.
I think on this side of the Atlantic, where a lot of the focus is.
Veteran newspaper reporter Jim Tucker has been covering the Bilderberg meetings for over 30 years and has physically attended more than 20. We traveled back to our hotel to see if Jim Tucker received the 2006 list.
Coming out of the G7 summit, President Biden announced
First heard
the
about
Build Back
Bilderberg
Better
in
World
1975.
which is really coming from his understanding and belief, shared by other members of the G7 and other like
20 happy years with
countries in Europe and in Asia.
all the wires
that
are
in this
clicking
era
here.
of
That could not happen without me knowing about it.
need to be more
Lady First Press these notes.
what we can
This
offer
calls in 1957, the late Westbrook widely syndicated column.
these developing countries have huge infrastructure needs, as you highlighted,
how
physical and digital
approximately 100
infrastructure. And if we
leaders
want
of
them
international finance
to
heads of
build
state,
out using
public
trusted
officials
providers
were
and an
meeting behind
ecosystem
armed guards
that
and
we are all going to feel comfortable, and more importantly, their citizens are going
What
to feel
are these
comfortable
powerful
using. We have to
internationalists
step
doing?
up to,
And why is it so secret?
increasingly
Why don't they have
provide
armed
some
guards
financing
outside?
for
Why is
that.
it
We have
sealed
to
off?
compete on the
Abuse
product suite. We have to compete with standard-setting bodies. And so the Build Back Better World initiative is really where President Biden wants to take the U.S. in offering a more effective, a more efficient, larger development financing role, starting with digital connectivity, but also including clean energy, and also including healthcare. And I think you're going to see us implement that through the Development Finance Corporation, through some kind of streamlined and expanded EXIM-related programs, as well as some other tools that we're looking at with USAID and elsewhere to really create kind of an integrated really, help foster those investments in trusted connectivity, not only in digital, but starting in digital and then expanding out to a couple of other sectors.
Rich area to come back on. First of all, again, let's Vice President Susan Lund. I mean, Dr. Lund, congratulations on your appointment. I think a very rich and very experienced from the school to Fulbright scholars to you've seen McKinsey, you've seen all spectrum of what we are talking about.
My name is Daniel Estrelin, and I've been doing this for the last 15 years. I'm from Canada. I'm very proud of my country because, as you can see, there's a lot of people covering the Bilderberg conference. Last year, it took me 14 and a half hours to get to Munich. I was pulled off a plane in Milan. I was pulled off a plane in Munich. They interrogated me 4 hours at both places. I was able to call a friend, a journalist in Rome, as a result of his presence and others, calling the Foreign Ministry Department in Italy. They backed off and they let me go. They basically told me that they were keeping an eye on me 24 hours of the day. The little hotel that we were staying at, Jim and I, out of the 20 rooms, 6 were occupied, 3 by the CIA and 3 by the German Secret Service. That's how serious these people are, and that's how afraid they are of actually what we may be able to reveal and what we actually do publicly on the Bilderberg intents.
Daniel Estrelin has covered the Bilderberg meetings in Europe and North America for more than 15 years. His book, Club Bilderberg, has been translated into more than 20 languages and is a global bestseller. Estrelin has photographed many past Bilderberg meetings.
Over the last couple of years, they've been reeling with the amount of leakage that they've been experiencing, so it's getting harder and harder. But again, it will never get too hard for us because of the sources that we have inside, our top-notch sources, people who are actually working for them, the Secret Service, the second layer, people in the Bilderbergers, the clerks, the administrative office, they're there. They are our eyes and ears, and every time there's something out, we always get the information.
So you need almost a 5-to-1 leverage.
That's Mr. Peter Vassamel.
I think that's the Queen.
Private sector companies.
You see it?
In a way that leverages private sector. So our goal is to
What usually happens, the Secret Service guys who are protecting the Bilderberg intelligence, the staff, the coaches, the chefs, when they actually get to see and to hear what some of these nasty people are talking about, they're the first ones to look for us and the first ones to make sure that we get the information from the meeting. Again, we're very rigorous with information that does come out. We double, triple, even quadruple the confirmed sources, make sure that all the information checks out. A lot of the stuff, the Bilderbergers have planted information, make sure that this disinformation nullifies the accuracy of the reporting. The decisions that these people take, again, they're not only decisions that affect business community, they affect politics, business, environment, across the entire spectrum. And these decisions are made and taken by a very elite group of people behind closed doors this year at the Brook Street Hotel. We are not privy to these decisions. We're not allowed to know what they're talking about. But we'll definitely feel the consequences of these decisions over the next 12 months when events which apparently by accident seem to happen, in fact, have been planned right here this year at Brook Street Hotel between 8th and 11th of June. Bilderberg is an elite organization, and the way it works, the protocol of the meetings is the staff, after they're vetted out, they're told exactly how they're supposed to behave themselves, meaning that they can never address the attendees, they can never speak to them unless they're spoken to first, they can never look them in the eye. they have to approach them from the right side, the people who are right-handed, and from the left side, the people who are left-handed. They can never look them straight on, and needless to say, all the information that is being spoken and during the conferences is under no circumstances allowed to come out. That's what they're told. They're threatened with not being able to find another job anywhere in the sector if they reveal any information to the press. Now, I think what is very difficult for most people to understand is how such a small group of 125 men and a few women control a population rate of 6 billion people. Actually, it's much easier than you think. These people work on what I call systemic methodology, meaning that you take a pie, just imagine you take an apple pie, you slice this apple pie, you pieces, and put in front of each one of these pieces your man or woman of trust. And by controlling this individual, you control the entire organization. For example, if you take Paul Wolfowitz, who runs the World Bank, through him you can control the entire organization. You don't need to control what the dishwasher or the toilet cleaner thinks or does or believes in. You just need to control what he does and what he believes in. And what he does will permeate the entire organization. And that's how you control with very, very small power base an entire global population of 6 billion.
Throughout history, we've had people with power attempting to consolidate their power and hold on to it. So that's really the agenda here. The agenda is to stay as powerful as possible for as long as possible and crush any competition.
Thanks again. So I think I will leave the slogans aside because every time I come around whether it's green, inclusive, but I'll key up
Every
on
4 years, Bilderberg meets in North America, and in June of 2006, we decided to travel to Ottawa, the capital of Canada.
There's almost a
The
sort of
site of
undeniable fact,
Bilderberg.
which is that we need to call it multilateral responding of the
In Bilderberg's long history, many reporters attempting to cover the group have been harassed, detained, and even jailed.
One, to come up with a framework
Jokingly reassured my cameraman that the horror stories we read about were probably exaggerated.
and
I
then
was wrong.
specifically actions that say here's how
We know reporters get detained, and airports people aren't let in. We know people
Where do you think in Finland
sent to the
is
jailhouse
moving
3 or 4
on
hours. It happens every time. Well, that now is
I know
time.
you talked about trusted
They admitted Bilderberg,
I know
that they had pressure put on them by the government,
the president
heightened security, and that's why all this happened. Because I was told that by 2 separate people.
had
They scoured our records for hours yesterday and hours today, trying to find something on us. Of course, there was
then
nothing.
specifically
It was just scary. I mean,
that
again,
will
I've
have
been
to
all
have
over the world. I've never
RDSC
seen anything
work
like
better
this.
than they
It was
are
like
today.
hours
So
of
let's focus
humiliation.
on that, right?
They said, what are you here for?
You've got
Well, I'm here to cover the media,
talks
cover
about
the
working with
I'll
that
be on the
RDSC.
department. I was answering all the questions. It was clear I wasn't a threat. It was clear I didn't have any report. It was clear I was pressed. It was clear I was going to interview people. They were going to deny me. They told me earlier that I was probably going to be denied.
Well,
And
thank
you guys
you so
showed
much.
up, and everything changed.
Well, I think the question that
My plan
how we
is
do in Finland
to
or Europe is
go out and try to interview Jim Tucker,
yes,
try to
I
go
think,
down to the Bilderberg
the
Group.
frame is there.
On the outskirts of the national capital today, black limousines with darkened windows converged on a hotel where private security guards imposed ironclad control. The limos carried royalty, political power brokers, and industrial titans to a secret meeting that will last all weekend. It's known as the Bilderberg Group. Could their objective be world domination?
Towards Africa, towards the developing world, that now it's
There are
time
several
to-
rings of security.
and that's why we gathered
The American delegation at every Bilderberg meeting is usually protected by the CIA and a special division of the army. The British delegation is protected by the
what we
MI6.
have to do.
The Israelis usually are protected by
silence.
the Mossad. The Ottawa
And
police
then we come to
is
the question
is
of how we
They
get
have
the
very little, actually they don't have any information at all on what the meeting is about. They don't know who the Bilderbergs are. Then there's an elite private firm protecting the perimeter.
But now my message here today and tomorrow is
photographers
we have to
and bothering
go with
the
the
protesters, but that's like
let's say
the stuff. The heavy stuff is done by the security
actions
service such as the
going, and
CIA,
that's why
MI6.
I'm meeting with EXIM, I'm meeting with DFC and other financing institutions, because as I said earlier, we really have to act now. But then we also have to look at the infrastructure.
We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order. David Rockefeller.
he had nobody guards.
And also I want to thank
So today Rockefeller and Mr. Beck was separated.
My name's Renee. I'm from Manitoba. It took about 26 hours to get here. Just to show that I'm against the Bilderbergers, just to fight for my freedoms, fight for my rights, make sure that my children can grow up in a free country.
Rockefeller frontman Henry Kissinger is always a key participant. Here you see the president of the CFR, Richard N. Haas, followed by vice chairman of Rothschild Europe, Franco Barnaby, who is speaking with Henry Kratz, and behind him is Richard Holbrooke, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Ahead of Daimler Chrysler, Jürgen Eric Schremm arrives by helicopter. Here, the owner of the Washington Post, Donald Graham, escorts Indra Nooyi, the head of PepsiCo. Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, whose father, Prince Bernhard, founded Bilderberg, is a leading figure in the group. Of course, globalist kingpin David Rockefeller, seen here with his bodyguard, James Ford, always attends. The then newly appointed World Bank chief Paul Wolfowitz is photographed at Bilderberg 2005. It has been reported that Wolfowitz had attended previous meetings, while still the Deputy Secretary of Defense, a violation of the Logan Act. Under the Logan Act, it is a felony offense for any member of the federal or state government to meet with members of a foreign government without the express authority and authorization of the President or Congress.
Your answer, I think,
Put
if you
simply,
were from
it
the
is
Washington
illegal for
DC
members of the
crowd,
government
sounds
to
great.
meet secretly behind closed doors with foreign power brokers due to the problems of corruption and espionage that it brings.
I don't know what we
For
get
this
out of our
reason,
discussion
many prominent
about that
politicians attend, but their names do not
makes
appear
life
on the
better.
official
Another
list.
point on the
Despite
regulatory
the Logan
environment
Act,
we're all
the governor of New York's name, George Patek, does appear on the list, and we were able to catch the governor on tape
I think
walking
if
with
us to
David
ask most
Rockefeller at
African
Brook
colleagues
Street.
or friends what they need from us, do you think they will say
upset
we
about
got more
the fact that
regulatory
they're being
assistance, or would they say,
Well, I'm sure they are. I
getting
mean, look
some
at the
money
tinted
from you,
windows.
which I get
They don't
from
want to be
China,
seen. They don't want
build
even
the roads?
anybody
How do
know
you
they're here.
address
So I'm
that?
sure they're ticked. And that's why we're here to
Individually,
Do you think that they were angry? They were on the front page of the local paper today. You think they're in there reading it right now, Jim?
Yes, I don't think they're happy about it. They prefer
that's where we need
nothing
to
at all,
be.
no publicity.
Like I think,
Absolute
back to
secrecy.
Beach Point and his leadership and President Biden's, the DFC, the Development Finance Corporation of the United States, made a pretty amazing, I think, extraordinary jump from OPEC to DFC. And I'm going to ask now that all our European colleagues are to match it. The jump was this, among other things, whether the cap number and equity and debt, those are the need for a DFC investment anywhere. American Nexus was a requirement and has become a strong preference. So DFC can fund a Finnish company in Africa in this setup. It's good to know where Finland or EBRD or BIEM will get to it, because that's where we need to get to truly working on DFC collaboration. This is what they call it complementary investments. I'll let you think about it till I come back. Big over to you. Again, I think a little bit of a shock that you spend a lot of time at the Trade and Technology Council. At the end of the day, when you talk about working together, the two big heavyweights on the economic front is EU and US. And how we can come together.
Before I get to the heavyweights, I also want to highlight some of the work from this administration's perspective Australia, Japan, India, where at the Leaders Summit just, I guess, 2 weeks ago, there were announcements coming out of all 4 countries to support new funding for infrastructure in the Asia-Pacific region. And we sort of are seeing that as, you know, what you think you characterize as kind of parallel investments, sometimes co-investments in these kind of big
legally tied knots where you're
In the
literally
city,
looking
around
at
10% of the people are
IFPIs
aware of the
investing
global
together,
agenda.
pooling funds, but
We
certainly
traveled the
parallel
park with
investments
close to
is
half of the
something
people
that's
we randomly spoke to.
practical and tangible, and we've gotten our...
Man, what did you say about the American Union?
Yeah, you know, sort of one person can fund this tranche of it, the next can fund this tranche and that. And so we're doing that in Asia, and we're also doing it in Europe.
You have the Trilateral Commission that's also part of the Bilderberg,
and you know,
which is
today,
the United States, Europe, and Asia.
Timing, and so we're having
most of this is public
similar
knowledge.
conversations in
Nobody
Europe,
wants to believe that there are conspiracies
with the European
that
Union.
world leaders are already elected before they're voted on.
Member states. So I think
So
it really
here
is,
we know that
the work
Bernard
we're
Lord
seeing
is part of
kicking
the
off
circle.
a couple of weeks ago, but really
I was surprised to read that Harper addressed the group in 2003. Because my understanding was nobody gets into politics without becoming part of the Bilderberg Group. And then you find out afterwards that is the case. That
Well, Bill Clinton went there in 91, George Bush Sr. back in like 85.
I do want to make one point,
Blair, same thing.
which is I think when we think about
We think that we're electing as leaders
as
have already been pre-picked, whether it's liberal or conservative. They're already part of the group.
Kenya,
They own
Ghana,
the
or
horses,
whatever.
They own the horses, and I understand that, for example, in the United States, it's a one-party system with two factions. So you think it's two different parties.
Oh, it is.
Helping
It's like Bill Clinton constantly
for the
vacation.
companies, right? The financing is a key piece of it. But actually, telecom there is a number of countries,
All that's come out.
private commercial
Just
capital
all stay.
available.
They're not going to let trillions of dollars
Money out there.
The good news is people are waking up.
I think
When you read human history, when you study it, all you see is elites trying to dominate, subterfuge, Machiavellian backstabbing, and somehow in the last 50 years they convinced Westerners that the government's fine, can do no wrong. How did this happen?
More valuable and trusted player than, you know, is
I mean, people just follow. They don't want to believe these things will happen. No way. We'll just follow along with the norm. That's all.
And
It's
then,
just
you know, at the end of the day,
makes it easier for everyone.
Come in, you know, cheaper over the long run, you know, because of lower power consumption and, you know, better life cycle costs. So I think that's actually another
sits at the top of the power structure. 125 of the richest and most influential individuals on the globe make up its membership.
Providing a platform where the government and
From Istanbul, Turkey, to Chantilly, Virginia, we have tracked the elusive Bilderberg Group.
is missing, particularly on the digital side. So you got a lot of
Bilderberg always insist on a media blackout. By June of 2008, we had already figured out that Barack Obama was the elite's puppet of choice. The national media claimed that during the weekend the Bilderberg Group was scheduled to meet, that Obama had speaking engagements set for Chicago and the Midwest. We knew better. In a classic bait and switch, the Obama campaign told the press corps to get on Obama's campaign plane, and that Obama would join them on the flight to Chicago. Campaign staff then slammed the door shut. The fawning press had been shanghaied as Obama's campaign aircraft lifted off without Obama.
Rupert, why were we not told about this meeting and that this either wouldn't be on our flight until the doors were shut and we were about to taxi to take off?
Again,
relevant effort is actually
we had a desire, Senator Obama had a desire to do some meetings. Others had a desire to meet with him tonight in a private way, and that's what we're doing. We set up these meetings. They're being done tonight. Again,
Is there more than one meeting? Is there more than one person?
I'm not going to get into all the details of the meetings. I don't know that I've got a ton more different answers for all of your questions.
Obama wasn't going to Chicago. He had a meeting to attend, a secret meeting.
Initially, it was believed that the secret meeting took place at Clinton's Washington, D.C. home. Obama's spokesman denied that, but won't confirm where the former rivals met. He also declined to comment on their topics of discussion.
For a day and a half, the mainstream media engaged in a wild goose chase, trying to find out where Hillary and Obama had gone. 3 cover stories later, the corporate press had to admit they had no idea where the 2 candidates had gone. And to this day, Clinton and Obama aren't talking.
Plenty of sources knew about this meeting, told us and others that it was at Hillary Clinton's house, but clearly it wasn't.
In 2008, the trail led us to the Westfields Marriott Hotel, right outside Washington, D.C.
to the government.
We just flew into Washington, D.C. We're driving to the Westfield Marriott. Tomorrow, the hotel's closed. Throughout the week into the weekend for the Bilderberg-Group meeting. So we're going to check in the night before. They're going to kick us out tomorrow. So we're going directly into the belly of the beast. The hotel will be filled with at least 5 spy agencies. CIA, Defense Intelligence, Mossad, European Union Security.
We checked into the Westfield's Marriott 48 hours before hotel guests were scheduled to be thrown out ahead of the annual meeting. The building was nestled in the heart of the military-industrial complex, with the National Reconnaissance Office and Raytheon just a stone's throw away.
Cash to their families in the countryside. And it went wild. And this became a dominant player. Now we're starting to see it in West Africa. So there's going to be waves starting
During
in
the
Senegal,
entire
starting
two-day
with
event,
remittances.
anti-New World Order
These
protesters
were a third of
and
what
alternative
the
media circled the
large-scale
hotel.
telecom player was asking, and so their market share was shot to roughly half. Now they're expanding across West Africa. So on some level, we know what works. So now let's get to it. Let's say
This is Bernanke, man. Bernanke, you're going down!
Monopolies? No, we don't. We're all about creating competitive markets. And actually, in the State and Enterprise Fund, there are very clear guidelines about investments in state-owned or partially state-owned and how much ownership is state-owned before rules and regulations. And I think, this is where I'm going to come back to digital. Digital is an example of
the main conference hall at close range